I left my family's easy kid role behind. Then my brother showed up at work with a demand. Hi, I'm Alex, 24, and 2 years ago I made a decision that shattered my family's favorite illusion, that I was the easy one, the strong one, the one who wouldn't leave. I was standing in the garage under a flickering light bulb, hands shaking, packing the last of my sketchbooks into a milk crate when my dad knocked once and came in anyway. "We need to talk," he said. I kept my back to him. He stepped over my bike, leaned against the workbench, and sighed like this was all a big inconvenience. "You're seriously doing this?" he asked. "Walking away because we missed a birthday?" It wasn't just a birthday, but I knew saying that wouldn't go anywhere. So I said nothing. He tried a different angle. "You think you're proving something, but you're hurting your mother. Your brother he's struggling. You know that." I turned around, holding his gaze for the first time in weeks. "No, I don't know that. I know he's loud. I know he breaks things and we all pretend it's normal. I know he gets sympathy while I get silence. Alex, come on. Tell me one time you stood up for me. One time." His mouth opened, closed. "That's not fair." It was a script. It always had been. Fair meant comfortable for him. Fair meant don't mess with the balance, even if the balance meant my brother Max smashing my phone screen last Christmas and me having to apologize because he was overwhelmed. I waited. He didn't answer, so I went back to the crate. "You'll regret this," he said. There was, the curse they always lobbed when I didn't comply, regret. But this time, I didn't feel afraid of it. "I already regret staying this long," I said. That night, I moved out with 2 crates, a duffel bag, and a friend named Theo who showed up in a rusted Honda Civic with no judgment and a 6-pack of root beer. He didn't ask for the details. He just helped me carry the crates into his guest room and said, "You crash here as long as you need. No pressure, no weird rules about which moods you're allowed to have." I crashed. Then I unpacked. Then I started a list titled Things That Are Mine, and the first item was this decision. Theo's guest room smelled like cedar and freedom. The walls were bare except for a crooked poster of an old arcade game and a single shelf with too many coffee mugs. That first night, I lay on the twin bed staring at the ceiling, not crying, not spiraling, just suspended, like I was between stations, waiting to see if the next stop was collapse or something better. I didn't text anyone from home, not my mom, not Max, not even my cousin Ray, who used to slip me extra dessert when she sensed something was off. I figured if anyone really wanted to know how I was, they'd ask. But the silence told me what I already knew. I had been the background character in my own house, useful, quiet, replaceable. 2 days in, I got a string of texts from my mom. The first said, "We're worried. Please come home." The next one said, "Max hasn't been eating," like my absence was some kind of poison. The third, the kicker, "You're punishing us for no reason. This isn't like you." That's when I realized something. They missed the function I played, not the person I was. I showed Theo the texts, half laughing like maybe I was overreacting. He didn't laugh. He looked me in the eye and said, "You know there's nothing wrong with wanting to be treated like you matter, right?" He said it so plainly I nearly choked. I didn't answer. I just opened my laptop and started applying for jobs. Anything that wasn't tied to my dad's real estate firm, where Max got a paid internship the minute he stopped showing up to class. 2 weeks later, I was working mornings at a record store. Dusty sleeves, creaky floorboards, and a manager named Lex who let me play my weird playlists and didn't care if I showed up with bed hair. At home, Max's meltdown saga continued via my mom's guilt-drenched updates. He'd thrashed the living room, then shouted at Dad, then somehow been rewarded with a weekend trip to clear his head. Meanwhile, no one asked how I was clearing mine. Until Ray messaged. She said, "I saw your brother's tantrum on FaceTime. I couldn't believe it. I'm sorry, I should have said something sooner." I sat with that for a while. The first apology from anyone in my family that didn't include a defense, a redirect, or a guilt trip. I texted back, Thanks. I'm okay. Finally. That same night, Theo knocked on my door holding 2 mugs. You working tomorrow? He asked. Yeah, why? I figured we could hit the arcade after. Clear your head. He didn't know it, but that sentence landed harder than all my mom's paragraphs. Because finally, someone was asking me what I wanted. We did go. Theo dragged me to the arcade the next night, and I ended up playing skee-ball against his friend Jake, a barista with a crooked grin who cheered like he actually meant it. When we left, he walked with me to the parking lot like it was the most natural thing in the world. He asked for my number like he expected I'd say yes, and I did. It all blew up on a Tuesday, the kind of day that starts out normal enough to trick you. I had just finished stacking a shelf of used jazz records when my phone buzzed 5 times in a row. That was never good. I wiped my hands on my jeans and checked. Mom, please pick up. Mom, it's important. Mom, your dad had a panic attack. Mom, Max is refusing to leave the house. Mom, this is all falling apart. There it was again, the storm, and I was being summoned as the sandbag. I didn't respond. I finished my shift, walked home through light rain, and found Theo on the porch eating cereal straight from the box. You good? He asked, like he always did. Not what happened, not who hurt you now, just, you good? I nodded, then shook my head, then said, my dad had a panic attack. Theo blinked. Is he okay? I guess. He's home now, stable. And you found out because your mom blew up your phone? I nodded again. Theo paused, then said, you don't have to go back, Alex. I know. Do you? He asked, not unkindly. I didn't answer right away, because the guilt was still coiled in my stomach like some ancient parasite whispering, be the good son, be the fixer, prove you're not selfish. That night, I finally called Ray. She picked up on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call, she said. Did you hear about my dad? Yeah, your mom told everyone. She said it's been harder since you left, that Max is on edge again. I scoffed. When is Max not on edge? She didn't mention that. She never does. There was a beat of quiet. Then Ray said, I know this sounds messed up, but maybe this is what needed to happen, for them to see what life's like when you're not holding everything together. Do you think they will? No, she said, but you will. And that landed harder than anything else, because it wasn't about waiting for them to change anymore. It was about realizing I already had. I ended the call and stared at the ceiling for a while, feeling the tectonic shift, the moment when the rope you've been pulling finally snaps, and instead of falling, you realize you're standing. That was the night I wrote the letter. Not to be sent, not to get them back, just to say it out loud. I am not your safety valve. I am not your quiet default. I am not the one who stays just because you expect me to. Then I folded it and slid it into the back of my sketchbook, not as a goodbye, but as a beginning. 3 days after I wrote the letter, Max showed up at the record store. He didn't come inside. He stood across the street, arms crossed, hoodie up, doing that thing where he pretended not to be waiting for me while staring daggers through the window. Lex noticed him first. You got a stalker, or is that a family member? Worse, I said. Both. Whistled, she said. Want me to call security? Nah, I sighed. Let me handle it. I stepped outside, the bell over the door jingling behind me. Max didn't move until I was halfway across the street.
Then he looked up, jaw clenched, like he'd been forced to lower himself just by showing up. Hey, he said, like we were catching up, not standing on opposite sides of a fallout zone. I said nothing. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Dad's still not great. Mom's a wreck. She cries every day now. Says she doesn't recognize our family anymore. Yeah, I said. Sounds familiar. His face twitched. You made your point. You left. You proved whatever. Can you come home now? That stopped me cold. Not, we're sorry. Not, I understand now. Just, okay, you got your dramatic exit. Now reset the system. I took a step back. I didn't leave to make a point, I said. I left because I had no place there that didn't involve shrinking. Max frowned like I was speaking another language. What are you even talking about? Do you know how many birthdays I spent waiting for you to not ruin them? He rolled his eyes. Jesus, are we still on about that? No, I said, voice calm and terrifying even to me. We're on about the years, the ones I spent stepping around your moods like landmines, while Mom and Dad told me I was so good for understanding, the ones where I cleaned up after your tantrums and got called mature for never asking for anything back. You got everything you needed. No, I said, I got everything you didn't want. His mouth opened, ready to shoot something back. I cut him off. Why are you here, Max? Really? He looked away. They think you'll listen to me. They're wrong. I turned to walk away, but he grabbed my arm, just like he used to when we were kids, like possession. But this time, I didn't freeze. I yanked my arm back with a force that startled both of us. Don't touch me, I said, dead quiet. He held up his hands like, whoa, but the mask slipped. He was pissed. Not because I yelled, but because I wasn't scared. He muttered something about me being just like Lisa, then stalked off without another word. Lisa. Of course she was the new villain. Anyone who gave me air was the enemy. I walked back inside, heart thudding, face hot. Lex looked up from the counter. You good? I nodded slowly. Yeah, that was the last round. Final boss fight? No, I said, just the last time I mistake proximity for loyalty. She raised her mug like a toast. Welcome to level 2. That night I told Lisa everything. She was Theo's roommate, the one who actually held the lease, the one who didn't flinch at messy emotions, and she'd met Max exactly once, long enough for him to decide she was a bad influence because she didn't smile through his mood swings. I told her about the sidewalk ambush, the half apology in Max's eyes, the grab. She didn't explode. She just listened, arms folded, leaning against the kitchen counter like someone cataloging evidence. When I finished, she asked, "Did he say why he came?" "They think I'll listen to him." She nodded once. "Of course, because when guilt stops working, they send the messenger who knows where your bruises are." I let that sit for a second, then said, "He called me just like you." Lisa smirked. "I'll take it." We had tea on the porch. No big speech, just a sound of crickets and the warmth of knowing I was finally somewhere I didn't have to earn my right to sit still. The next morning, my mom sent a 3-paragraph email titled, "Let's be reasonable." It started like always. "We just want peace. You're still our son. We miss you." But by the second paragraph, it turned. "It's not fair to blame Max for everything. He's been through more than you know. He doesn't have your strength. You've always been our steady one. You can't fault us for leaning on that." I closed the laptop. That line hit harder than anything Max had said. "You've always been our steady one." Translation: "We've always assumed you'd take the hit." That night, Lisa saw me pacing. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just pointed toward the drawer with her spare house keys. "Still thinking about going back?" she asked. "No," I said.
I'm thinking about making it official. She raised an eyebrow. I want to change my mailing address, update my info, make this place my legal home. Lisa smiled, slow and proud. We'll go tomorrow. DMV's miserable, but they've got vending machines. That little step, just paperwork, felt bigger than any fight I'd had with my family. It was proof. On paper, I no longer lived at the house where apologies came second to Max's mood swings. The next week, I got my first college acceptance letter. Not from a dream school, just a solid local state university. But when I opened it at the kitchen table and Lisa whooped loud enough to scare the cat, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not relief, not survival, pride. Not because I'd been strong, but because I'd finally stopped letting that be my whole personality. The acceptance letter changed everything, not because it meant I was leaving, but because it meant I was going, somewhere, forward, somewhere that wasn't a response to Max, or a reaction to my parents, or damage control dressed up as maturity. It was mine, No asterisk, no trade-off, just mine. Lisa printed it and stuck it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a dinosaur. "We're framing it later," she said. "Don't argue." Meanwhile, the silence from home stretched longer. No follow-up emails, no guilt packages, no last-ditch apologies. I'd expected a second wave, something desperate, maybe even a surprise visit. But instead it was like they'd folded in on themselves. Until a letter showed up. Not a text, not an email, an actual letter, handwritten, from my dad. The envelope was thin, the kind you buy in packs of 50 when you're trying to pretend you send real mail. I opened it in the hallway while Lisa was on the phone. It started with "Dear Alex" and ended with "Love, Dad," but everything between those lines read like someone trying to keep their hands clean while dropping something heavy. He wrote about the house feeling empty, about the coffee table still being scratched from the day Max threw a remote, about how Mom cried a lot lately but refused to name my name. Then he wrote, "We didn't handle things well. You're right about that. But we didn't think we were choosing Max over you. We thought we were protecting the one who needed it most. Maybe we forgot that strong doesn't mean invincible." That line hit like a punch to the ribs. I read the rest twice. It wasn't a perfect letter. It still made excuses, still tried to explain instead of apologize. But it was the first time anyone in my family had said, "You're right," without immediately adding, "but." Lisa saw my face when I came back in. "Let me guess," she said. "They're not sorry, but they feel really bad that you noticed." I laughed, but I was blinking too fast to hide it. She waved me over, took the letter, and read it slowly. When she was done, she handed it back like it was made of glass. "You can write him back, or not, but you don't owe them closure just because they finally realized they can't replace you." I nodded, tucked the letter in a drawer, not as a keepsake, more like a scar I didn't need to press anymore to know it had healed. The next weekend, the record store hosted an open mic night. Lex asked if I wanted to read something since she knew I wrote, and I surprised myself by saying yes. I stood in front of a few dozen strangers and read a poem I'd written called "Middle Seat," about always being the one in between, absorbing elbows, giving space, holding jackets. People clapped, not politely, loudly. After, a girl with purple hair came up and said, "That poem felt like my entire high school experience. Thanks for putting it into words." It wasn't a standing ovation, but it was the first time someone saw me not as Max's brother or Mike and Janine's quiet son, but as someone with something worth saying. Jake came too, sat in the back with a latte, and grinned the whole time. Afterward, he said, "So you are the artsy, brooding type. I knew it." "I'm not brooding," I said. He raised an eyebrow.
"Okay, I used to be brooding, now I'm just reconstructing." "Good," he said. "I like this version." Later that night, as we walked back under the streetlights, he asked, "You think you'll ever talk to them again?" I thought about the letter, about the silence that followed, about the years before that, full of noise I wasn't allowed to answer. "Maybe," I said, "but it'd have to be on my terms, not as their strong one, just as me." Jake nodded. "Then I hope they get to meet that version. He's worth knowing." That was the moment I realized something no one in my family had ever told me out loud. I wasn't strong because I stayed quiet. I was strong because I finally stopped. It wasn't the letter or the silence or even the poem that made me realize the grip had finally loosened. It was what didn't happen after. No storm, no guilt ambush, no reeling anxiety that maybe I'd gone too far. Just regular life. I went to work, I studied, I helped Lisa build an IKEA shelf that almost cost us our dignity. I kissed Jake outside the bookstore in the rain like we were extras in an indie movie and nobody was watching. And then, one Thursday evening, I got a text from Ray. "Ray, heads up, there's talk of selling the house." At first, I thought she meant figuratively, like a metaphor for the collapse. But no, she meant the actual house, my childhood home. The one with the crooked banister I was never allowed to fix because your brother leans on it when he's overwhelmed. I stared at the message, then reread it. "Ray,
They're looking at smaller places, one-bedroom condos. Max is apparently moving in with some friend in Bellevue. Your mom said it was time for a fresh start. No mention of me. Not once. They were selling the house, reshaping the whole map of our family, and I was just not part of the plan. The old version of me would have unraveled, would have thought, they're leaving me behind, or this is my fault. But now, I felt the tiniest flicker of peace. They weren't starting over, they were just reacting again. Same pattern, new scenery. A few hours later, I got an email from my dad again. Shorter this time, just 4 sentences. We're selling the house. It doesn't feel the same without you anyway. I hope you're happy. Dad. I read it twice, then let it sit there. I didn't need to reply, not yet, maybe not ever. That night I walked to Forest Park alone. I didn't bring music or a book, just me, just breathing. And at one point I looked up through the trees and thought, this is what space feels like. Not silence I had to earn, not peace I had to pay for by sacrificing something. Just space to exist, to be. No apology required. The house sold in late spring. No announcements, no invite, not even a farewell photo texted out to relatives. Ray sent me a blurry real estate listing with the caption, "Guess that's that." The front yard looked smaller than I remembered. The tree Max used to throw his shoes into had been chopped down. The cracked walkway was finally repaired. It looked generic, like someone had bleached all the history out of it to make it appealing to strangers. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. The weirdest part of healing is how anticlimactic it is sometimes. You spend years picturing your breakdown, yelling, door slamming, cinematic storm, and then when it happens, it's just you quietly not caring anymore. That was the final sign, I think. Not that I was angry, but that I wasn't. Lisa bought me a cake on move-in day at my dorm. Chocolate, lopsided, with my name spelled in clumsy icing letters. Jake helped carry my stuff up the stairs. Boxes of books, thrifted kitchen supplies, a lava lamp I refused to explain. And when everything was unpacked, we sat on the floor eating cake straight from the box. Jake handed me a forkful and said, "So, how's it feel?" I looked around at the tiny dorm room, the blank walls, the faint hum of someone playing guitar 2 doors down. I grinned. "Mine," I said. He nodded. "Good answer."
That week, I started classes, signed up for a creative writing workshop, got a work-study job in the campus library. For the first time in my life, I wasn't operating in response to someone else's meltdown. It was like being handed the pen to my own story and realizing I didn't have to make anyone else the main character. I still think about them sometimes. Max, my mom, my dad. Not in a way that stabs me anymore, more like checking the weather in a city I moved away from. Familiar but distant. Cloudy most days, occasionally stormy, but no longer mine to prepare for. Ray still texts, sometimes updates, sometimes jokes. She's applying to grad schools. We send each other bad memes and articles titled 25 Signs Your Family Might Be a Cult, but like emotionally. And every now and then my dad still emails. Nothing heavy, just little things. A photo of a book he's reading, a music video he says reminds him of those old drives. I read them. Sometimes I reply. Sometimes I don't. And that balance, that choice, it's worth everything. A few weeks into the semester, our writing professor gave us an assignment. Write about the moment everything changed. Everyone else wrote about breakups, epiphanies, car accidents. I wrote about a birthday cake that never got cut, a party that never happened, a line that got crossed quietly, like a match being struck in a dark kitchen, and how sometimes the real turning point isn't when they hurt you, it's when you stop saying, "It's okay." My professor left a note on the page. This feels real. It was, because I lived it. And now I get to live everything else, on purpose. My name is Alex. I'm 24 now, and the night my family canceled my 18th birthday turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it didn't hurt, but because it taught me to walk, and I haven't stopped moving since.